Nick Olsen with me, and he is about to open his stunning new show here at the Red Hill Gallery. Hi, Nick. How are you?
Hi, very well, thanks, Beck.
Thanks for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
Now, let's look at your work here. The colours, they're amazing, and you've sort of reflected here in this part, the palette. Can you tell us what that is about?
Yeah, that's funny that you should pick that up. It's a big part of what I do. The colour palette is part of the process where I actually prepare the canvas firsthand with a whole range of really quite bright colours. And I'll do a lot of scraping back and trying to create these little accidents that happen between colours. Then I'll draw over the top of that and start to do the actual painting.
See, the colour is the structure underneath. That's actually where you start at that point. And are you looking for discord or contrast, or what's the play you're trying to find in the colour?
I guess it's exploration, exploring my aesthetic play, I suppose, because I don't know about starting on a blank canvas, and people always think that's great, but a blank canvas is quite daunting. So I like to just start the play process, I guess, without actually thinking, oh, I've got a drawing to do that's going to look in a certain way. And often that play allows me to then proceed with a little bit more kind of adventure.
Why have you brought this in? Like, what's the thinking behind that? We can just... It's actually is that the actual palette, or?
Yeah, well, that started when I was overseas doing this residency over in Scotland. And I'd have to walk around with all my art materials in my hand and paint outdoors. And so I'd have this little selection of paints on the base of the board, and then I would draw above that, but it was just like a palette. And then when I'd got back to the studio, I'd see this fantastic array of...
Yeah, it's stunning. I love it. I want to dress like that now.
Yeah, no, well, it's, that striped light. It's the Brisbane striped light that we heard about in the Go-Betweens songs, and I just thought, well, that actually relates so nicely with that element of the architecture, the putting together, something that's a little bit rough, so you can see each line, each of these pieces of collage board are quite worn and a little bit sort of, sketchy really, but then cutting them into a sharp line kind of offsets that. So there is a lot of contrast in my work. There's rough, but there's also this kind of, set off with a background of quite a...
Strong composition, like this one here. We're just talking about the erection here.
Yes, it is.
Like, the landscape is changing, so how do you feel about that?
Well, it's, I don't really want to be up in it, that's for sure. I'd prefer to be down in the mustard.
It shocks this, doesn't it, to have that there now, do you feel?
Yes, but I have a history of doing high-rise buildings, so I'm quite an interested architectural student, and so living out at Pullenvale, I would sit on the hill in my studio and look out across Brisbane Vista, and I would just see these buildings slowly rising above Mount Cootha, and I just thought, that's pretty cool. Brisbane,
something to look at now.
Modern. It is. It's a bit more kind of a progress report, I suppose. Yeah. So yeah, each building is another reference point to a time, and so I think Brisbane probably needs that, a little bit of documentation in the art form. Absolutely. And I think it's really it's quite interesting the way that I can be halfway through an artwork and then it's actually changed.
The landscape transforms. So come over here. I'm like, no, I love this painting. It's fantastic. Again, it's about the Brisbane landscape. What is it that you love about it so much? I mean, what is the essential quality that only Brisbane landscape has?
Well, I think that you've got to see the colour and the light. So, that's looking at west from, I guess it's Cairns Terrace up here at Red Hill. Yeah. But check the contrast between all of that fantastic angle, the sharp edges of those tin roofs, and then there's all those lovely fluffy cauliflower trees all around them, and I think it's just a really...
And that sort of languid line of the mountains behind.
Yeah, that's right. But a lot of those houses I've been to in parties in my student years.
Did you get around, Nick, did you?
Oh, yes. Certainly. That one I was laying down that side there after a few too many.
So just quickly, this is where he passed out. Did you have your first passion there?
No, there was no passion going on at all. I was, having esoteric conversations about, interesting things. So, no, I wasn't that sort of a guy. But no, we have, all these stories in our streets, and I certainly, recall years and years ago being able to do that, wander around to share houses. I suppose it's the memory of that I like about these inner city suburbs too.
And I guess we all grapple with the monoculture now, the way that things are set up. And so when your world is reflected back to you rather than just an American world or a British world, then that kind of builds a sense of identity and culture, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, like the music or the writing of this place, if we don't document it as ourselves as artists, then a period of time is passed, and then we don't have any kind of reflection or recollection if we're not careful. So a lot of those houses, I mean, that one particularly is still quite kind of old and musty, and a lot of them around there are really kind of, you look closely and they've all been, really nicely done up. But
I just love the truck. Just slightly tilting there.
Yeah, that's a little that's a removalist truck actually, and one of my subjects that I find quite interesting is that transient nature of suburban life, and there's people moving in, moving out. I did a lot of paintings and sculptures actually of those junk pickup days, and where you get all those fantastic kind of arrays on the side of the road of different white goods or whatever, and that sort of thing is really instructive, I think, or informative about what life goes on in there. So I must have this funny little kind of...
Well, you're telling stories, really, aren't you? It's like the stories of the city in a way, and this is like a part of Brisbane that's very specific to Brisbane. It doesn't exist all through the city, does it?
No.
So it's a time and place.
And my next series may be the next outer ring, like blonde brick, 6-pack blocks,
Love it.
whatever.
I can see one over here.
Yeah.
This is the start. So is this a new idea you're looking at?
It's not really new. It's actually, this is a subject that I've actually looked at before, and it's that whole documenting the, I called it Three Queenslanders because that's now old, as opposed to the new, it's actually quite attractive compared to...
I like those buildings.
Yeah, a hell of a lot nicer than some of the ones that we're seeing going up. But, again, it's that sort of documenting of ages, and I think a lot of art in our country at the moment is a real, it's quite inward looking, and people are talking about themselves a little bit more. I like to think a bit more beyond me.
But it's also Brisbane, out of most cities, like anything like this is sort of considered heritage. This is considered old, so this will be demolished. But there's so much modernist architecture, and like each signpost of what's evolved in the city has been removed on so many levels. So it's really vital, that sort of building.
Yeah, and it's funny because these two buildings are both gone. Yeah, right. So there's units there that are putting that one to shame now. So
it'll go soon. All right, one more question. We're going up here now, because when you put a show together like this, are you making a show to sell work, or are you exploring an idea? What's the driver?
Good question. It's really is all about selling it. Yeah. And so yes, I do consider the fact that some of the things that I do, especially earlier in my career, were I was interested in architecture, but I was interested in kind of not urban but more kind of industrial side. I love artists like Jeffrey Smart and Edward Hopper, who would marvel at the sight of a magnificent wall. Yeah. But after a while, I started to think, it's not only is it not actually my, in my heart and soul, but it's more of an aesthetic pleasure of my own, and I'm being a little bit selfish. Yeah. So I slowly worked around the idea of bringing a little bit more colour into the work, not really overt, bright colour, but certainly I think that was in my thinking, is the fact that I'm going to do this forever. I'm going to be a lifelong artist, and
that's a big commitment.
Yeah, it is a big commitment, and and I think it's something that is in the back of every artist's mind. So if they're pretending.
Artists need money because they've got mortgages. Hello.
Yeah, yes, they do.
And families and children.
Yeah, and
It's not a charity.
If I don't get to go to Aspen once a year, you know, what's it for?
What's the good of it all?
So no, it just so happens that I'm kind of lucky that I have got this kind of interest in these sort of things, and you know.
And just quickly, because I think we're time's up. A departure.
Yeah, well, this is certainly closer to my own, you know, backyard. So I go paddling on my kayak out on the river, and I love that afternoon light on a shimmering, glossy Brisbane river, and it takes me to that kind of imagined world when there was no one here. You know, I guess it takes me back to that idea of time moving past in this part of the world, and I keep thinking of, you know, that first, you know, settler's boat coming slowly up the river and thinking, ooh, this is a wild place, mysterious, and maybe we'll set off here. And and it also reminds me every now and again I actually have to get on the river, because just before I was married, I'd spent a lot of time paddling, and that's where I actually memorized my wedding speech in that beautiful, calm river environment.
How romantic. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Nick. So the show opens Friday?
Yep, Friday night, 6 till 8.
Come on down, if not to the opening. It's open for how many weeks?
I think till the end of April, about the 28th of April. So, yeah.
And it's here at Red Hill Gallery on Musgrave Road. I think it's number 67. Stunning work, beautiful storytelling, and capturing the heart of our city. So thank you so much. I'm Beck Mack. It's Popsart, and this is Nick Olsen.
Thank you very much.